November 1956. The most powerful empire in human history fell in just 11 days, not from war, not from revolution, from a phone call. America told Britain to stop their military action in Egypt or face total economic destruction. Britain surrendered within hours. This moment, the Suez Crisis, marked the end of British dominance. But here's what nobody tells you. Britain didn't fall because of one crisis. Britain fell because it made the same mistakes America is making right now. Let me show you how Britain rose and fell. Because once you see the pattern, you'll never look at America the same way again. In the 1800s, Britain ruled the world economy. The British pound wasn't just money, it was the money. Every country used it. Every central bank stored it. This gave Britain incredible power. They could print money to fund wars. They could borrow cheaply because everyone trusted the pound. They could spend more than they earned because the world needed their currency. Sound familiar? But something was changing. By the late 1800s, America's economy had grown bigger than Britain's. American factories produced more. American innovation moved faster. American wealth grew larger. Yet the pound stayed on top. Why? Because the world was used to it. Changing systems is hard. So even as Britain weakened, their currency stayed strong for a while. Then World War I destroyed everything. Britain borrowed massive amounts to fight the war. By 1918, Britain transformed from the world's biggest lender to one of its biggest borrowers. They owed everyone, especially America. Instead of accepting this new reality, Britain made a fatal choice. They pretended nothing had changed. In 1925, they made one of history's greatest economic mistakes. They tried to make the pound worth what it was before the war, even though Britain itself was no longer that strong. It was pure denial. To keep the pound artificially high, Britain raised interest rates so much that their economy choked. Unemployment exploded. British products became too expensive. Meanwhile, British leaders kept spending like they still ruled the world. Military bases everywhere. An empire they couldn't afford. Borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Does this sound familiar yet? The cracks widened. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, speculators attacked the pound because the math didn't add up. Britain spent more than it earned, borrowed more than it could repay, and pretended reputation alone would save them. In 1931, the pound lost 30% of its value overnight. But remarkably, the pound remained important. Why? Because Britain forced its colonies to use it. India, Australia, Pakistan, dozens of territories had no choice. Britain held its own colonies hostage to prop up its failing currency. America does something similar today with the petrodollar system, forcing oil sales in dollars. The difference is colonies eventually gain freedom, and oil nations eventually get tired of American control. World War II made things worse. Britain borrowed even more. By 1945, Britain owed more money than their entire economy produced in a year. The empire was bankrupt, surviving only on American loans. And still, British leaders refused to see reality. They kept their military deployed globally. They kept pretending to be a superpower. They kept spending money they didn't have on pride they couldn't afford. This brings us to 1956, when everything collapsed. When Egypt took control of the Suez Canal, Britain saw it as an insult. With France and Israel, they invaded to retake it. The military operation was succeeding, but Britain forgot something crucial. They were no longer the world's banker. America was, and America was furious. President Eisenhower decided to teach Britain a lesson. The United States threatened to dump British pounds on the market, which would collapse the currency and make Britain unable to import food and oil. America also blocked Britain's emergency loan. Britain's money was draining at over £100 million per week. They were days from total financial catastrophe. British Prime Minister Anthony Eden had no choice. He ordered a complete withdrawal. In exchange, America allowed the loan. The empire had been brought to its knees by its own creditor. Those 11 days revealed what had been true for decades. Britain wasn't a superpower anymore. Britain was a debtor living on borrowed time. The moment its creditors called in the debt, the illusion collapsed. Now, here's why this should terrify every American. The United States is following the exact same path. Britain's debt after World War II was over 200% of their economy. America's debt is approaching 120%, and climbing fast. We added over $2 trillion to our debt just this year. We borrow $7 billion every single day just to keep the government running. Britain lost its reserve currency partly because it kept spending on a military it couldn't afford. America spends more on military than the next 9 countries combined. We have over 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. We're policing the world with a credit card. Britain forced colonies to use the pound. America forces oil sales in dollars. But that system is cracking. China and Russia trade in their own currencies now. The BRICS nations are building alternative payment systems. Even American allies are hedging their bets. Britain refused to accept its decline and kept acting dominant even when the numbers said otherwise. America still acts like it's 1995, like we produce everything the world needs, like there's no alternative to the dollar. That arrogance cost Britain everything. It's about to cost America the same. But here's what really terrifies me. Britain's fall happened gradually, then suddenly. For decades, warning signs appeared. The debt, the decline, the overextended military. But because the pound stayed strong, British leaders convinced themselves the good times would last forever. Then came one crisis, just one. And in 11 days, a century of dominance ended. America's Suez moment is coming. It could be a failed military action that turns the world against us. It could be a debt ceiling crisis where the world decides American bonds aren't safe anymore. It could be financial sanctions that simply don't work because countries no longer need our banking system. It could be something we can't predict. Some shock that reveals the truth. America is living beyond its means, sustained only by the world's willingness to keep accepting our currency. The numbers for 2026 are alarming. We'll spend over $1 trillion annually just on interest payments. More than defense, more than Medicare. We'll be like a household so deep in credit card debt that minimum payments consume the entire paycheck. When Britain reached this point, the end came fast. No gradual decline, no gentle transition. One day Britain made demands. The next day Britain took orders. One day the pound symbolized power. The next day it was a warning to others. Britain's final mistake was refusing to see reality.